I'm Amy from Doodle Dog Designs, and today I'm going to show you how to make walnut dye. Let's get started. I gathered some black walnuts and I've put them in my dye pot. This is a stainless steel pot that I only use for dyeing fabrics or other things or making dye. You don't want to use a pot that you use for cooking when you're making dyes. You could use other nuts other than black walnuts. Black walnuts are going to produce a very dark dye. If you don't have any walnuts available to you in your yard, you might drive around and look for somebody that has walnut trees in their yard. Most people find the walnuts to be a nuisance and difficult to mow around, so they would probably be happy to let you pick up some. When you're all done, you can use this dye for dyeing fabrics or dyeing yarns, or you could use it as an ink. They used to use this walnut dye as an ink for writing with a quill pen. As you can see, some of my walnuts are black and some are still fairly new looking, but they're all soft and getting close to turning black. If you want, you can set them aside until they all turn black, and then the cooking time will go faster. But you can also just go ahead and cover them with water and cook them when they're soft. The part of the walnut that makes the dye is the inside of the husk. So now I'm going to fill the pot up with water to cover all of the walnuts. I've got some water added, it's almost to the top, and I'm going to turn the heat on and bring it to a simmer. This has been simmering for about 2 hours now. I've got a paper towel here that I've got on top of an ice cream tub tray, and I'm going to take a stainless steel spoon that I only use for dyeing, and I'm going to dip it in and get a little bit of the liquid and put it on the paper towel just to see what the color looks like. As you can see, it's still pretty light. I'm going to be very careful when you take the spoon out and don't get it on your countertops. It will stain, so I'm going to put it in. I've got the bottom part of the ice cream tub here, and I'm going to use that for storing my spoon. The longer this simmers, the softer the outside of the walnuts is going to become. So I'm going to use my spoon and break open some of these because that's where the dye is. After about 5 hours of cooking, I've been able to get a lot of the husks off of the nuts. But you want to be very careful here that you don't get any dye on your clothing or your hands or the countertops because it will stain. I took another sample at 3.5 hours and at 5 hours, and as you can see, it's getting darker the longer it cooks. It's now been simmering for 7 hours, and most of the holes have separated from the walnuts. I took a sample again at 5 hours, 5.5 hours, and 6 hours, and you can see it is getting darker. I'm going to do one more here now at 7 hours. And this is 6 hours, and this is 7 hours, so it's gotten darker still. I'm going to turn it off and let it cool. I didn't want to splatter walnut dye in the house, so I went outside for this next step, and I took another pot that I use only for dyeing, and I covered it with part of a sheet. As you can see, it's a very windy day outside. And then we poured the walnut dye mixture into the new dye pot, straining it through the sheet. You want to be sure to pour slowly here, as it will splash quite a bit, and make sure you wear gloves and old clothing. I did end up getting quite a bit of the dye on my shirt and on my pants. Once you have all the dye poured, you can let it drain for a few minutes and then carefully lift the sheet up and lift it out of the pan. And at this point, you can squeeze the mixture a little bit through the sheet if you want to make sure you get all of the dye out. Be sure to properly dispose of the walnut mixture. Now we have just the walnut ink in the pot. At this point you could use it to dye something. You can store this in a cool, dark place if you want to use it later. Depending on what you're dyeing, you might be able to use the dye bath more than once before you exhaust all of the dye. You can take a sample on a paper towel like we did earlier to see how much strength is left in the dye. At this point you could also simmer it down a little bit longer and make a dye concentrate, and then when you get ready to use it you can dilute it based on how strong you want your color. I hope you found that helpful. Be sure to click the like button and subscribe below. I'll see you next time. Bye.